I'm just saying it to sound extreme, is to defend a Kli Yakar. But the Rebbe defends the Kli Yakar so good. The Kli Yakar is moidendik, you should know. The truth is, the Kli Yakar, they're achreinim. But they write like Yishonim. I mean, there's a lot of pirushim of Chumash Machreinim. Kli Yakar is Kli Yakar. There's no doubt about it. It's very, very special. It's extraordinary. But the Rebbe is masbi. The whole Sikha is explaining a Kli Yakar. Usually he'll bring an Achel, disagree, The Sikha is partially explaining, but the Rebbe explains the Kli Yakar so good that you had the only kasha you walk away with was did the Kli Yakar think this? Did the Kli Yakar think this? This is the first. Huh? He's verschiedene Sfarim, macht das Sachsfarim. Anyway, that's number one. Number two, this is B'Hashgacha Pratis, a hemshich to last week's Sikha. Last week's Sikha, we learned two Rashis. Remember? You were not here. Yeah. Rashi from Kisisa and Rashi from Vayakil. And the Rebbe brought out the point that Yidden were rushing to build the Mishkan because they knew that the kapara of Chet HaEgel is not going to happen until they're finished. Zedufim uzrizim. The only one who was not in the rush was Moshe Rabbeinu himself because of the Shaykhs to the Aveda. This Sikh is going to pick up on that theme. In fact, the Rebbe is Mitzayin in the footnotes to the Sikha that we learned last week, page Tziyun 39, is a Tziyun to last week's Sikha, where everybody besides Moshe Rabbeinu was rushing to build a Mishkan. But the lumdus of the Sikha is gewaldig. The lumdus of the Sikha is oisei reilach. The lumdus of the Sikha, in other words, the Sikha has a gedaim, the Sikha has a chap. But the nigla that comes out of this chap, I think is very gruntig. It's mamish moidendik. It's poshet moidendik. It's mamish moidendik. And it's a small nuance. Chazi was asking me before about the pratim about the Mishkan. The whole Sikha revolves around such a little detail in Chumash. But the Rebbe makes it so rich and so beautiful. Mamish, it's oisei geweinlich. It's mamish oisei geweinlich. So let me say, the Sikha is 8 pages long, okay? The last 3 pages you don't gotta learn. Now, if they don't gotta learn, the Rebbe wouldn't put them there, right? You do gotta learn. But the last 3 pages is like another Sikha already. The last 3 pages about Moshe Rabbeinu. The first 5 pages is about the Yidden, and the last 3 pages about Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, after we learn the first 5 pages, we'll decide how much we're going to do. We're going to learn the last 3 pages, but we'll probably learn them a little bit more quickly. But I want to learn the Sikha in order this time. Because I want to start with the Kli Yakar. Because it's amazing. Okay, in dem Tam, was wir gefunden der Teire bei Malachas und Binyan HaMishkan. When it comes to the work of building the Mishkan, as Moshe Rabbeinu gave ma cheshbon was ma gemacht, right? The Moshe gives a cheshbon of how much gold they spent, how much silver they spent, and how much copper they spent, right? How much they used of each min, right? There's a ha'ara, by the way, later, ha'ara 24, where the Rebbe asks, why do you only count the gold, the silver, and the copper, and not the wood, and not the wool, and not the linen, and not the skins? But the cheshbon precisely how much gold they use, 29 kikar and change, how much silver they use, 100 kikar and change, how much copper they use, 70 kikar and change. And by the copper, they don't mention the kir. Because the kir was made only, I told someone today in Shul, there's not one male penny in the entire kir. Not one man's, the whole kir is women's, and it's shalom bayis. Shalom bayis, the kir is shalom bayis. Just women's money. It's not even counted. It's not in the cheshbon of the Shevim Kikar. So the Torah counts how much gold, how much silver, how much copper. The shaila of the Sikha is, when the Torah counts how much silver, it says what they used it for. When the Torah counts how much copper, it says what they used it for. When it says the Torah counts how much gold, it does not say why they used it for. The shaila is why. And the Klechik is a very simple answer. The simple answer is because they counted the gold before they made the Big Day Kahuna. And the Big Day Kahuna also had gold. But they didn't have silver and didn't have copper. So the silver expenditures were complete. The copper expenditures were complete. So you give the number. but the gold you haven't finished because it's left to the big day kahuna. So that's why you count how much gold they used, but you don't say what it was used for. So the shaila becomes, just 1 second. I'm in the middle of a shir. Okay. Yeah. When the wife calls, you pick up the phone. At least that's my minute. Wife calls. These are not phones. This is a phone. This is a broadcast. This is a recorder. This is a broadcaster. This is a phone. Ay. So the Kli Yakar says, you count how much gold they used, but you don't say what it was used for because they didn't yet make the big day kahuna. It's a simple teretz. But the Rebbe is going to make this into such a moidendik alumnus. A moidendik alumnus. Let's go. As Moshe gegeben a cheshbon. Moshe gives a precise calculation. Not how much they used, but was man hat gemacht von kesef and acheishes. First of all, how much silver they had. Second of all, how much copper they had and what they used it for. For nid was a mishkan. Aber nid was man hat gemacht von dem Zov. He does not give a cheshbon of what he counts how much gold they use, but not what they used it for. Zog de Kli Yakar, a simple teretz. As we nor men hat verendigt alle meloches ha-mishkan beklal befrat. When they finish making the mishkan, in all of its details, and mishkan means not the big day kahuna. Und alles, was man gedaf machen, everything that was necessary to make from kesef and necheshes, from silver and copper, is gedei lahoitzi atzmin min hachashad, that nobody should think that some of the money was pocketed. Hat Moshe noch Eidem hat gemacht the big day kahuna. Before they made the big day kahuna, welches is given so, it had gold, gewollt geben a cheshbon from the kesef and necheshes, he gives a precise calculation of silver and the copper. The truth of the matter is, any child who learns chumash has a kasha. Why? In Balabatish you say, how should Pekudei start? Pekudei should start with the big day kahuna. Vayakel was about the Mishkan. Pekudei big day kahuna, and after you do the big day kahuna, which is till the Revi, then you should say Eila Pekudei Mishkan. Count how much silver, how much gold, how much copper, because when we were children growing up, the building of the Mishkan and the big day kahuna always go together. So over here it's weird. The truth is it always bothered me. And the Rebbe in this Sikha clarifies it. He said, why are you counting the silver, the gold, the silver, and the copper? You haven't finished. And the Rebbe is going to have another diuk, which is also moidendik. And this second diuk is going to help explain the first diuk. Why are you counting gold, silver, and copper before you're finished? So why we'll find out later. But this is for sure true. Hey, yois, that they still needed more gold to the big day kahuna, and they couldn't count that gold because they hadn't used it. So you say what the silver was used for, you say what the copper was used for, you say how much gold was used, but you don't say what it was used for because you're still going to use more gold. That's what Kli Yakar answers. It's a very, very nice tenet. The logic of the Kli Yakar is, if there's such serious halachas about Vayisim Nikiyim, if you're a Gabbai Tzedakah, you have to be so careful that nobody should be able to say that you pocketed the money. The halachas of Trumas Halishka. When the guy went to take the Machzah Shaka from the Lishka, so he went into the Lishka with clothing that had no pockets. And the whole time he had to talk, the whole time he had to jabber. Why? You shouldn't put the money in a half shekel, 50-cent pieces. It was all zog, and you like to cash a half a dollar in mile. In other words, you have to be so careful when it comes to Ma'aseh Tzedakah. So as soon as they finish building the Mishkan, so they say, listen, this is how much was collected, this is how much was used. There is no waste, there is no disappearing funds, right? That's the Kli Yakar's teretz. So the Kli Yakar's teretz is that you want to count the gold, the silver, and the copper right away. You don't want to wait for the big day kahuna because you don't want to give people a few minutes for a chashash. So you count all three. But since you're going to need more gold, so you don't say what the gold was used for. It's a balabatisha kasha, it's a balabatisha teretz, right?
But it still doesn't take away the shkar.
Huh?
How does that take away the shkar?
Why?
For the gold.
Right. So fine. At least for the silver and the copper, get it up to chash. And gold, how much gold did they need in the big day kahuna? It was thread, and then there was pamoinim. It wasn't a lot. But fine, point well taken. So the shaila becomes nachazach. when they finish making the big day kahuna, they should count the gold. Huh? Next paragraph. Und das, was hat nicht gemacht, kein Cheshben, von dem Zov, take if noch and Gemara see it's big day kahuna. I think this is still the Kliyaka. Fine, you have to count the silver, the gold, and the copper, right? Silver, copper, and gold right away. There shouldn't be a chashash. I get it, I understand, yeah? But when you finish making the big day kahuna, retabulate the gold. The Mishkan was 29 kicker and change of gold. The big day kahuna had the pamoinim, it had the mishpitzais, it had the tabois, it had the psile zahav. So after you finish with the big day kahuna, give another cheshbon for the outstanding gold. If you're so worried about people being choishish you that you are not particular with my sucker, just like you make the cheshbon now, make the cheshbon later again, and then add the additional things for which the gold was used. So the Kliyok again answers. Huh? There was no silver and no copper at all in the big day kahuna, right? Is Adam Avite still the Kliyok? I'll be divvy medish. Kishabah Meisha, law says cheshbon al kol davar v'davar. When Moshe Rabbeinu calculated what everything went for, chosam and amishkol elef hashvamez chamisha v'shiv mishkolim, the silver 100 kikar went for the adonim, correct? And then there was a little more than half a kikar. As elef hashvamez, and I'm sure you know the word from Alter Rebbe. Alter Rebbe has a ketz on this pasuk. The Maimon is actually printed. V'se elef hashvamez chamisha v'shivim. It was Tafresh Ches. Tafresh Ches, Tafresh Gimel, there's a whole bunch of stories about it. Okay, but it's the Amaim from Alten Rebbe, but the Alter Rebbe gave makets. Was rechent from Beis Alofim, Taf Chav Ches, from Churban Bayesheni. Churban Bayesheni is 3,828. 3828. And from that, you count 1,775, Tafresh Gimel, and the Alter Rebbe said a different year. In Teresh Shalom brings sich, and no chassid would repeat it. The Chassidim B'Shas Meiser realized that the maskana that the Alter Rebbe gave was different than the cheshbon. It was like a sod, and when that year came, but it was the times that it's a tzedek, yerim cheshbon. But okay, fine. I have no problem with Mashiach saying Tavshin Pehei is a ketz. The rikyas of the kumam bepel mamish. It shouldn't be ruchni is the kakitzim, but the Rembarash told the tzemach tzedek about this ketz. Taket Tafresh Ches. The fam agashmi is the Mashiach. Nishkal lekut teteris. So he says like this. Chayakar is answering. Al pi medrash. Kishabal Meisha lost his cheshbon kol davar v'davar min achasam min amishkol elef v'shvamez chamisha v'shivim. He knew that 100 kikar, which is an enormous amount of silver, was for the adonim, right? There was less than 1 kikar more that was used for what? It was used for the chagurais around the amudei hachotzer. They were wrapped with silver bands, and they also had vovim. It was very little silver that was used in the chotzer. It's less than 1 kikar. And the Medrash says that when they were making the cheshbon, they forgot what it was about. They forgot the cheshbon. They knew that 100 kikars, 100 adonim, which is the vast majority of the silver. Opposite, you felt 1,775 coins that they didn't know the cheshbon. And, as the Rebbe was bringing, Moshe Rabbeinu pocketed the 50 cents, you know what I'm saying? V'shachach v'lo yodea ma asamim. Moshe Rabbeinu forgot what it was used for it. And there was a chashash for this little bit of silver. Yatzis baskel v'yamra, a baskel came out, an echo came out and said, right, that the Eibishter testified that what the silver was used for. Moshe was trustworthy. So they counted the copper, they counted the silver, they counted the gold. They said what the silver was for, they said what the copper was for. They didn't say what the gold was for, because they still needed to use more gold. But in the meantime, the Eibishter got involved. They counted the copper, so that's alles gestimmt. When they counted the silver, they were missing 1,775 silver coins, and the Yidden started to scream, and the Eibishter says, excuse me, it was used for this and this. So the Kliyakar said the Poshet Tezach. Das heißt, Afal P.S. Dos was der Baskel Eidus gesagt. When the Baskel said Eidus, Vese'elim is given vegan kesef, nicht vegan zahav. The Baskel came out and announced that the silver that you see discrepancy, that you see, how do they say it in America? I say it in a businessman. The impropriety. What a great word. Impropriety. What does impropriety mean? Impropriety means a ganev, a oisvarf. Impropriety. That's a great word. Impropriety. The impropriety of 1,775 coins of silver. So the Baskel came out and resolved it. But once the Eibush got involved and proved that you could trust Moshe Rabbeinu, so they stopped the chashash. Once they stopped the chashash, they stopped it from gold also. So they finished making the big day kahuna, they didn't make the cheshbon. That's what the Kliyakar says. Look. V'bal dober, as Yidnom gesehen, as ben Shamayim is ben made of Moshe, that the Eibush that testified to Moshe Rabbeinu that he didn't pocket a penny, is he showing nicht gedaf, habe ich cheshbon if not. That's why they didn't have the gold either.
Why can't you look at Chilon? You give the cheshbon of the silver and the copper, give the cheshbon of what the gold was used up to that point, until the minus the big dekuna, which only was
At that point, before they even got to the gold, Basco came.
Well, the push of the teretz is
that's
because they were going to wait to finish the big dekuna. Then they would add the additional gold that was used the big dekuna, and then they'd give the cheshbon the sachalka finalis. And by the way, the Rebbe's teretz is so much better than the Kliyakar's teretz, so it's automatically going to give a much better teretz to your kasha. The Rebbe's teretz is, the Kliyakar's a nice pshat. The Rebbe is defending the Kliyakar's teretz, but the Rebbe's world is, the Rebbe's teretz is so much, it's really, I hate to use this bracket, it's really yeshivish and go'inus. It's go'inus. It's go'inus, it's so yeshivish, it's so lumdish. It's meidendik. The Kliyakar is a nice pshat, the Chumash Rashi, a medrash. So what's the Rebbe's kash in the Kliyakar? The Rebbe's kash in the Kliyakar is a poshtazach. If the Baskel got involved, why didn't the Baskel get involved before they started counting anything? If the Eibush is going to mix in anyway and say, to make Moshe Rabbeinu honest, so say it up front and skip the whole business. You're right. The Eibush Mamish believed that they have a chance to suspect Moshe Rabbeinu table at all, and they'll for sure have it done as kol ha'adam l'kav zechus. Based on their history,
It doesn't do it for no reason. If there's a good reason for it, I'll do it. I'll bring it down to the Basco. There's no shad, why should we bring it down? Prevent the shad? To prevent the shad?
Look at the last words of the first paragraph on page 281. Klap ishmaya galya azmen vet choyshed zayin. That's the answer to your question. Klap ichai, like he said, from past history, klap ishmaya galya azmen vet choyshed. The Eibush could have come along. If he was going to let Yidden kvetch and complain, he should have kept quiet now also. If it was Moshe Rabbeinu, he should have defended him in the end. So wait a second. So the Rebbe answers the question with Nacha Kasha. And this is also a Meir Dika Kasha. It's a Meir Dika Kasha. What is that?
So the Kasha is not on the Zohar, the Kasha is on the Kesef over here.
Yeah.
But why in 1775, you know, why should be...
The Kasha is on the Baskel.
On the Baskel, oh, okay.
Right, now we see the Vart is one to have a Baskel, so you don't have to tabulate the gold anymore. Let the Baskel come out l'chatchila, and not only you not have to count gold, you want to count silver, count copper, count anything. So the Rebbe answers the Kasha with Nacha Kasha, also on Mod Nezach. Betzalel ben Uri ben Chor l'mata Yehud. V'itei Aliyah ben Esamach l'mata done, right? Did they make the Mishkan or the Big Dekuna also? Big Dekuna also, yeah? So when you say, in the beginning of Pekudah, Eile Pekudah Mishkan Edus, Ubetzalel ben Uri ben Chor also. V'itei, when should that be written? After Big Dekuna, for the Metten was Haksaran mitten. For the same reason that you have a kasha on the counting, you have a kasha on the mention of Batal and Aliyah. When it's all finished, mention them again. Why in the middle? Why in the middle? Now, but again, to the counting, we know, because Jews are such mamish trusting people. You know the Haftarah Pasha Shkolim. It's a Rambam in Halacha that they you're not allowed to sit over them in the Beis Hamikdash and count pennies. You're not allowed. You have to trust them. The Haftarah Pasha Shkolim, that you made a pushka and they put money inside and they collect the money by the kabayas. Be'emunah meisim. Be'emunah meisim means you can't sit over a guy who's working the Beis Hamikdash and say, you're a ganef. It doesn't work that way. And the Rambam brings it halacha l'maisa. The Yidden over here are choishish. So why you count the gold, the silver, and the copper for the big tikkun? Fine. But why do you have to mention Betzal and Aliyev in the middle? How does that come in? Right? V'yesh shleima. Yeah, Pekudei HaMishkan, Asher Pukad Al Pi Meisha. When they say, I'm reading Siv Beis. When you read in our parsha that Moshe Rabbeinu was counting the gold, the silver, and the copper, and the Kli Yakar says that the reason it's being counted now is because the Yidden was Choshesh Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe had to be Menaki himself right away. Says the Rebbe, there's much, much more to it. There's a much deeper inyan. It's nitstam geben acheshbon. It's not just tabulating where the money went to show that there was no waste. Nor says negeya to them etzem inyan hamishkan. It has to do with the mishkan level of etzem. Okay, and the biggest chiddush of this sikha Rabbi says is going to be it's negeya to the etzem hamishkan and not the big day kohuna. We're counting gold, silver, and copper now. Says the Kli Yakar. Why? Because the Yidden were choishish, and you have to take the chash away. Says the Rebbe, that's not the word. No. Counting the gold, silver, copper of the Mishkan was negeya to the etzem Mishkan, but only the Mishkan, not the big day corner, because there are two different gedalim. Okay, why? Listen. L'choyre, favos chazed do ibe ditayre nochamol. Ubehegdim. He asks the second question. L'choyre, favos chazed ibe ditayre nochamol. Why does the Chumash repeat again? Betchilas HaParsha. Gleich noch der Meshte Posuk und Betzalel ben Uri ben Chol Lamatu das Kol war Me'ela ve'ite Allah ben Echisamach ben Tarash v'cheshev. Man weiß doch schon von früher, als sie seine gewinnt die Esam Malacha. We know from Pashas Vayakel, and before that Pashas Kisisa, that Betzalel and Oliv and the Chachma Lev did all the work. And so why are you repeating it down? Right? Like Medrash Chazal, when I say Echlet Pirashashi, Kum di Teda Lozna wissen, as also Asher Tziva Hashem es Mesha, Asher Tziva Eisei Mesha Enksev Kan, Asher Tziva Hashem es Mesha. The reason it's written here is to show Betzalel's Ruach HaKodesh, that Betzalel did things that Moshe didn't even tell him. Betzalel did things that Hashem told Moshe, right? Hashem brings in the Chumash, that Moshe didn't tell him, but Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu. Das Daf L'cheira Haben Hasbar and Sefer, second column. It still is a Shaila. Favor steht das Zwischen. Dem Pasuk Eleb Kudi HaMishkan v'gei Masha Pukat Al Pi Meisha und dem Cheshvan Kol Hazor. The first pasuk of Pashas Pekudi is speaking about counting gold, silver, and copper. The second and the third pasuk talk about Betzalel and Aliyev. The fourth pasuk is going back to the silver and the copper. It doesn't make any sense. The beginning of Pekudi. Eleb Kudi HaMishkan Mishkan, right? What's the next pasuk? Betzalel did it, and Aliyev, and then you go back to the count. Mamash Mitten. Why do you mention Betzalel and Aliyev in the middle of the discussion about the count? V'habir bazeh yeshleim. And the Rebbe gives a gewaldige teretz. It's a very beautiful yeshivish alumdish teretz. Okay? The Mishkan Gedav, the Shaykh to Klal Yisrael. The Mishkan needed to be community property, right? The halacha was, you know the story, there's a Yid in Montreal, his name was Rav Fegelstock. He was the Menal of Achei Temimim in Montreal for many years. Probably for 35 years, close to 40 years. For many, he was Meinach Yom. He lived a very long life. But he was the Menal of the Yeshiva into the early 80s, Mistama, for many years. And a part of it, I mean, he was a good principal. And the Montreal Yeshiva used to come every year Yud Shvat. That was their time. I'm assuming it means the Beis HaMedrash Bachim, so the Mesivta Bachim, they didn't bring little kids, but they brought Bachim. And he would come with them. So, one year he brought a bunch of Bachim, and they went to the Rebbe to Yechidus. And a lot of these Yechidus are not transcribed. The Rebbe used to speak a Sikha, and they're written down. So he made a pidyon for all the Talmidim, and he asked every Talmud to give $1. You're talking the early 60s, it was money. $1 was not 10 cents in those days. And the Seder was, all the boys came in, I don't know what ages, all the boys were by the Rebbe in the Cheder, and he presented the pidyon on behalf of the yeshiva and all the Talmidim, and then they would all walk out, And Rabbi Fegelstock, Olav Sholem, would stay along with the Rebbe. And the Chiddush would continue. So when they all walked out, the Rebbe asked him, "Has genommen by jeden Kind $1? You took by every boy $1?" He said, "Yeah." I don't know if the Rebbe said it or he indicated that some kids can't afford $1. It's a lot of money, $1, opinion in those days. And like, how do you take from everybody $1? End of story. The next Yud Shvat, they came again, 50 Bachrim. He took $50 out of his own pocket, which was a hamoynet geld. It was probably half a week's salary. It was a lot of money. He gave it out of his own pocket. 50 Talmidim, $50. It was a Mesiras Nefesh. There's no doubt about it. There was a Mesiras Nefesh on his part. He doesn't say that, but you have to be a child not to know it. So the same thing happened again. They all came in as a group. And they walked out. And he remained alone with the Rebbe. And the Rebbe, I don't know how it came out, but he told the Rebbe that this year he didn't ask the Bacharim, he paid out of his own pocket. So the Rebbe said with a smile, "Mistame das gewesen meisrei litzibur yofa yofa." There's a halacha b'machsa shekel. That when you give the machsa shekel, you have to be meisrei litzibur yofa yofa. It says lashon. You have to give it away very, very well. Why? You don't want to hold on to that machsa shekel in any way, shape, or form. Because if you hold on to your machsa shekel in any way, shape, or form, you don't have a shachas in every carbon tzibah. You only have shachas in the one carbon tzibah that was paid for in part by your 50 cents. But if you're moisel tzibah yafa yafa, you become a part of the tzibah, and you own the entire that gvias, all the shkolim. So you're shutaf in every carbon tzibah. So the lashon is moisel. So the Rebbe said to him, "B'tashmeichel," because it was a big Mesiras Nefesh, and the Rebbe knew. Yeah, he doesn't say all that. I'm just inferring it. You watch the video, you see this. This is the vart. You know why you're counting the gold, silver, and copper? Because you want to guarantee that it becomes moist tzibur. People gave gold. People gave silver. People gave copper. They didn't give the same amounts. One guy gave 100 coins of silver. The other guy gave 100 coins of gold. The other guy gave 5 coins of copper. Not necessarily because one is richer or poorer, but one was more generous, one was cheaper. So it's kumt lepeil. Does everybody have the same piece in the Mishkan? It was critical that the mois ha-Mishkan become mois tzibur. The gzav, kesef, and nechoshes becomes the property of the kehillah. That every yid is the complete owner of the whole Beis HaMikdash. And that's what the count is about. The count is not like the Yakar says, there shouldn't be cheshesh meisha rabbeinu. Bechitzonius, the Rebbe is defending the Kli Yakar. The whole Sikha is defending Kli Yakar. But the way the Rebbe is defending Kli Yakar is by going deeper. The money was counted, not because Moshe Rabbeinu was suspect to steal money. The money was counted because the people were suspect to hold on to their piece. I gave more gold than you. I'm a bigger owner of the Beis HaMikdash. And that would be terrible. Because if you own your piece of the Beis HaMikdash, you'd own any other part of the Beis HaMikdash. And your part of the Beis HaMikdash doesn't belong to anybody else. So there needed to be an action of Moshe Letziba Yafa Yafa. That was this count. With the Hadgasha that Moshe is doing the counting. Dafka Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? Because Moshe was the only one who had the Shaykhas the Chet Egel. So he's the only one who didn't need the Hashras Hashchin of the Beis HaMikdash. So he was the only one who could take everybody's money and say it belongs to everybody. That's the Eilip Kudi HaMishkan. Api Moshe. And it's not the big Dekun, it's just the Klei HaMishkan. That's why the count is now. The count is before Big Day Kahuna, not because the Jews were so suspect of Moshe Rabbeinu the shtick and they wanted the count right away. Because the Mishkan was the kapara for Chet Egel, not the Big Day Kahuna. And the Mishkan is the kapara for Chet Egel when the Shechina rests. And the Shechina rest depends on the fact that the Mishkan belongs to everybody. So Moshe's counting made it moist tzibur. That was the point of the count. The point of the count was to make it everybody. And by making it everybody, the Mishkan became a collective house. Became a collective house. The Shechina rested. It's a very, very beautiful pshat.
This answers why Mitzal...
Wait. The Mishkan had gedaft sein shayches to Klal Yisrael. It was very important that the Mishkan belonged to every Jew. Werd angerufen bereish Pashaseinu. Mishkan Eides Yisrael. This is the same Rashi that was quoted last week in the Sikha. that the Mishkan is the aegis for Yisrael. Sheshvita lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ma'aseh Ha'egel. At the Eibishter forgave the Ma'aseh Egel. What was the Rayeh? Not they built a house. They built a house and he moved in. When the Eibishter moved into the house, now you knew that it was a Korban Tzibur. Und die Nedavis von the Alla Yud Gimel Tazvot Dvorim, and the gifts, the offerings of the 13 or 15 materials. Hat man gedacht avegeben, you had to give them away, but often as in ganzen belaying in some tzibur, they should become entirely community. Look at footnote 18. Tzarich lemosram letzibur yafa yafa. You see that footnote? 18. That's the lashon which is brought by Machsa Shekel. The Rebbe is applying that to the whole Mishkan, not to Machsa Shekel. Nish bleiben shayach tayochid. In no way should the guy say, "You see the gold and this kaddish? This is mine." You see the silver and this other? This is my silver. There was not a lot to happen. Und das ist geworden durch dem. And the becoming communal was affected through the fact. Was man hat alles gebracht zu Moshe Rabbeinu, was all brought to Moshe Rabbeinu. But given the Nasi Kol Yisrael is the Nasi Kol Yisrael. Turn to page 282. V'al Yedei Zeh, and by him taking it all, is the ganze Trume was Yidden haben gebracht geworden. Nechsei Tzibur, it became community property by giving it to Moshe Rabbeinu. La'achrei wie Moshe hat abgegeben die Nidus HaMishkan zu Betal V'Aliv. He gave it to Betal V'Aliv. Und Kol Ishchacham Leif. Eif zu ton mit Dini Dovas die Alam Lechas HaMishkan. It was all brought to Moshe, yes? Hello? It was all brought to Moshe, correct? It becomes Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is the whole cloud. It's all good, yeah? But then he gives it away to the workers. And if you look in footnote 22, the last line in the first column, Uman Kene B'Shvach Kli. And in footnote 23, that Gamvaman the Omadein Uman Kene B'Kach Shvi, the last words of the first paragraph, Al Kaponim Yesh Lema Deshmei Alav. You give money to tzedakah, yeah? It's tzedakah money. But then the tzedakah hires a guy to work with that money. It becomes private again. Because he's not allowed to work with hektish. Right? One of the lachas in the Beis HaMikdash was that when they built the Beis HaMikdash, they built it with chulin. They were only mekadesh it after it was built. Why? Because the guys are building the Beis HaMikdash. If he sits in the shadow of the wall of the Beis HaMikdash on a sunny day, he's a male be'ektish v'chayav korban me'ilah. Kerev v'chemish. It's an aveda. So it was all made into hediyat. It was all made into chulin. And they worked with it with chulin. And after they finished, they were mekadesh it again. So it was all brought to Moshe Rabbeinu. Good. Mesa Tziba Yafa Yafa. Then Moshe Rabbeinu gave it to the Umnim. So Betal, that's why Betal and Ali are here. Why is Moshe counting? He's counting because of Betal and Ali. It was brought to Moshe Rabbeinu last week. And when they brought to Moshe last week, it was Mesa Tziba Yafa Yafa. Is that good?
That was hektish?
Of course it was hektish.
Then it becomes ois hektish?
That's right. If we had a sicha, we learned 2 gedorim in hektish. We had a sicha nicht lying. We learned 2 madregas in hektish and the Beis HaMikdash. I'm trying to remember what sicha it was. Pashas Truma. There's 2 madregas in the Truma. I forgot the sicha, but this year's sicha, Pashas Truma, was 2 eiches in hektish. I forgot what they were.
You're saying it becomes ois hektish?
That's they have to become ois hektish.
In that case, you should be counting it again afterwards.
That's the point. We're counting it after they finish building it.
Then they should count the gold too. You're saying that's
The big de kahuna doesn't have. It's a whole different cheshbon. Wait, forget the big de kahuna. So the chumash is perfect. They gave it to Moshe Rabbeinu. It became Mom and Hektish. Moshe Rabbeinu was counting it. Why are you counting it as Hektish? The teretz is because he gave it to Betal and Aliyah. The minute he gave it to Eisi HaMalacha, it becomes Ois Hektish. Now, the Rebbe doesn't use the signet that I'm using, that it becomes chulin. The Rebbe uses the lashon in footnote 23, Uman Kene B'Shvach Kli. It's halacha. Uman Kene B'Shvach Kli works even if he doesn't make it. If you guy to come to a guy with a piece of gold and say, make for me a spoon. So he's giving it the shape, of course, Uman Kene B'Shvach Kli. But if you come to a guy with a gold spoon, but it's twisted, and you ask him to straighten it, even over there you say Uman Kene. He didn't even make the keli, but he's making the keli better. Shevach keli, he's making the keli better. Uman keli b'shvach kli. In other words, until you pay him, the keli is on some level his. So that's why they're counting it again. It's unbelievably sweet, huh? Did the kliyakar mean this? I'm asking you. If it was Rashi, we'd say for sure. Did the Kli Yakar have this in mind when he brought the Medrash about the Baskel? I don't know. So the Rebbe says like this. Ubefrat im Timtza Leber. As if nish genommen kein schar for the Rabbi. Especially, there's upon him a different day is about this. That the Umnim did not get paid for their work. They were volunteers. If they were volunteers, then their schar is the schus. If their schar is the schus, they have a shtickle ownership in the mitzvah the schus. Last paragraph, first column, page 22. By them taking the gold and working with it. Bakumen amein bailus of the malachas hamishkan. They got some form of bailus over the work and the material with which they worked. V'bald ashem umnin ala malacha. The fact that halacha is when you do something, especially in the age of the guilds. Not today where everything is mass produced, where everything is individuated. Every craftsman used to put his name on every lyhadus that he made. Alachas kama v'kama lyhadus because it wasn't mass production like today. It wasn't a mold. Every keli was a little bit different, and it had in itself the mhusa the uman and his chush and his umnis. You own it. If you don't own it monetarily, you own it in name. Chorcha says it's nit in ganzen about shalati, but even though it was given to Moshe Rabbeinu, it became the tziburs. And when Moshe gave it to the umnim, it didn't become theirs completely because on some level it still belonged to the tzibur. It belonged to Moshe Rabbeinu, but on some level it belonged to them. Their fad had gedav zay b'kudi hamishkan. So they gave it to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Tzibur Yafi became Moshe Tzibur. Moshe gave it to the umnim. It became in some ways Moshe Yochid. So Moshe has to count them again. The counting after they finish is not because of the chashash that Moshe is a ganef. He's making it Moshe Tzibur. In the eifn of Moshe Tzibur Yafi. The father gedav zayin b'kudi hamishkan. I should put it up in Moshe. That noch them be betal. Come on, this is gorgeous. Come on, this is gorgeous. Noch dem. Wie betal hat verendigt die melechas hamishkan. He finishes the whole business. Hat gedav zayin apeula that do another act. The Pekido minyan durch Moshe Rabbeinu to be counted again. Und the alle malachas hamishkan, along with not just the material, but the shevach keli, the workmanship, the craftsmanship, azay, the money, the gold, the silver, and the copper, plus the expertise, plus the umnus, which is worth money also. Azay zollen ganz in zay nichse hamishkan, welches edes li Yisrael, klal Yisrael, has to be re-tziburified. And the way you re-tziburify it is you do another act that Moshe is counting. So the psukim at the beginning of Pekudei are perfect. You start off Elab Pekudei, you mention Betal and Aliv, and you go back to counting. Why? Because this is the reason for the Elab Pekudei.
What about the other gold? Not
the
big decliner.
What other gold?
The rest, the gold that was made in the Mishkan, wasn't ever counted again.
Sure, they were counted then, 29 shekel and change, 29 shekel and change. It was
It
counted.
doesn't say what it was used for.
It just doesn't say what it was used for.
And that's not needed for this?
No, it's not the complete list.
I said that never happened because
It-
of the
right.
Costco. Why was that not needed? This is the process of making it back to her.
Because the Ikir was counting it. The Ikir was, in other words, the Rebbe is not, we're still relying on the Kli Yakar. The Sikh is built, as I told you, this Sikh is built on the Kli Yakar. The Kli Yakar says you don't say what the gold was used for because it's not finished with the list.
Right.
So why don't you make the list later? Because the Baskel came out. According to the Sikh, you're not going to make the list later because the Big Day Kahuna don't need to be counted for reasons that you'll see soon.
Right, but the other gold does have to be counted, but it was counted.
It was counted, it just wasn't listed what it was for, and in this prat was staying with the Kli Yakar's part. In other words, the Rebbe is not going away from the Kli Yakar, he's explaining the oimik of the Kli Yakar. Okay? Der mit hat man sei arois genommen. By Moshe counting it after it's finished, they took it away. Von de Sheiches, was hat sich geschaffen, durch Asiyas, Betzalel, Voliv, Chocham, Leiv. Because they worked on it, and their craftsmanship was worth an awful lot of money, they were really skilled. So they had some ownership, or at least some name attached to the work that they did. So by counting it, it went out to werden legamri nichsei tzibur to become entirely communal property. Skip the bracket, last paragraph, 282. Und der Ribbon is the Teirem Mafsik. So that interrupts. Und so gleich noch den Posek Elab Kudi. The first thing is, as soon as you finish building the Mishkan, you got to count, right? Because you have to count to make it Mois Shel Tzibur. What about the Big Day Kahuna? The answer is Big Day Kahuna doesn't matter if it's not Mois Shel Tzibur. It's just the Mishkan be Mois Shel Tzibur. Why? Because just the Mishkan is the Chaper Mois Hegel. The Big Day Kahuna is not the Chaper Mois Hegel. So the Mishkan, which is the Chaper Mois Hegel, has to belong to all Yidden. The minute you finish building it, you have to count it to make it Mois Shel Tzibur. So every Yid should own the whole Mishkan. So it's the Chaper Mois Hegel. So you say the pasuk Eila Pekuda, he's counting, and you right away mention the B'tzal and Aliyah, because that's the reason you need the count. Is the Teira Mafsik und so gleich noch ein pasuk Eila Pekuda Mishkan Pekuda Mamesha, die zwei Psukim B'tzal mit Aliyah. Sie redt wegen dem Cheshbon von Kalazor und dem Cheshbon von the Kesef and the Cheshes. Before it tabulates the gold, the silver, and the copper, it throws in right in the middle of the story. It's a klutz kasha. Any person who's chumash sees this kasha. It's been bothering me, mamish, since childhood. And the Rebbe's tenet says, don't you understand, if not the B'tzal and Aliyah, he wouldn't have counted altogether. They're the reason for the count.
Because he gave it to them.
Because it became theirs. He's taking it back and making it community property through the count. Their mut is muzbed dem teicher and dem tzera for the b'kida hashal p'mesha. So you answered two questions. You answered why B'tzal and Aliyah mentioned right in the middle of the count. And you more importantly explain why it has to be counted. By Moshe Rabbeinu counting it. And Moshe Rabbeinu is the Nasi Ador. And he's the whole community. By him counting it becomes Moed Shel Tzibur. Becomes Moed Shel Tzibur. So the Mishkan is going to be able to do what the Mishkan is to accomplish. Siv Dalet. Any comments or questions? Any comments or questions? Speak of ever hold your peace, as they say.
The counting had to be done by Moshe, or was allowed to be done by Yid? That was
Dafke Moshe. Dafke Moshe.
Dafke Moshe.
Yeah, so far the reason was because Moshe is the Nasi Ador. Later the Rebbe is going to say because Moshe had no shayach to Chet Egel.
What we
Yeah. Das alles is benegeya to Melechas HaMishkan. But the need to count so that the Mishkan should become public property was only the Mishkan, not the Big Day Kahuna. Benegeya Albert to Big Day Kahuna, when it comes to the clothing of the Kohen, you find men as gleich b'shas atzivu l'meisha. When Moshe Rabbeinu is being told to build him, to make the Big Day Kahuna, you find with the Big Day Kahuna as follows. V'ata hakre v'lecha zok Rashi. La'achma shetig me'melechas ha'mishkan. They didn't start, there was a gzeres hakosuv that you couldn't make them at the same time. Even though l'chayra, the weaving factories should have been doing both, you had to finish everything about the Mishkan. The wood, the gold, the cloth, the material. And when everything was done, only then could you start making the Big Day Kahuna. The says the Big Day Kahuna v'asayasam, the garments of the Kohen, and making them. V'asdorach Big Day Kahuna. Ver de lakacha lekana, the begod that make them into Kohen. Right? This is a very interesting halacha, but it's a chumash Rashi. Calls man shebegdeyam aleim, k'deshasam aleim. The Kahuna depends on the begodim. Right? Unish be'emta. You couldn't start making the big because the Mishkan was finished. Or der beklau for Melechas HaMishkan. It's not part of Melechas HaMishkan. Zeyer asiyah dav zayin. The making of the big Kahuna must be dafke la'acharei shetigma Melechas HaMishkan. You finish. V'yashleimer adik b'zeh. Why? What's going to happen if you make them at the same time? The chaleis hakadusha for the chan li b'mishkan. The ability to make clothing that are going to make Koyanim holy. Ken zayin nor when it's done the mitzias for an art was ken zayin b'shachanti. If there's no Beis Hamikdash, there's no place to serve him. If there's no place to serve him, there cannot be such a thing as holy servants. You cannot make b'makadosh a Kohen until there's a house for worship. And the kedusha of the Kohen depended on the begodim. So until the Mishkan was built, the begodim could not be put together, because if you put them together then, they're not going to affect to be Makadosh the Kohen, because the Kohen cannot become a Kodesh until there's a Beis HaMikdash.
Is that why B'tzal and Aliyah said to do the mikdash before the Kalim?
Yeah, of course. The Rashi says it in the Tzava. Hashem told Moshe, when you finish everything in the Mishkan, and build a big Dekon. V'ert efshoriyas hametzias from the Khan, l'ifukun l'shirus, you cannot be guilty to make the Begodim Mishkan is complete. B'shas Abbas is netod the mitzias and amakam l'sharas. Because man, there's no Beis Hamikdash. It's netod even sug kain. There's no such thing as a priest. Ukedushas kain, and the holiness of kain. The Mishkan, who's going to serve in the Mishkan. Okay, and therefore you have to wait till the end. Next paragraph. Al derech zeh b'shaychet usiyas habegadim. Just like you can't be a kohen without a Beis Hamikdash, you can't have clothing for a kohen without a Beis Hamikdash. Metzias asiyas bigdei kahuna, the making of the clothing of the kohen, is la'achrei Beis Dog malachas hamishkan, only when you finish making the mishkan, because only when you finish making the mishkan is there a place with the kohen bichal, and only when there's a place for the kohen bichal can you have a kohen, and the kohen is made from the begadim. V'apizeh is yuvan. Was es das nicht gedarf sein Peket, wenn geht der Chelek Azov, was hat ihm von ihm, was hat mir gemacht, die Big Korner. This explains why, when they made the Big Korner, they didn't have to count the gold. Right? So the Bekliyoker said, because the Baskel came out, right? The Rebbe says, no, it's a whole other reason. Look, next paragraph, listen. Der Techen up Ulas Pekudi HaMishkan. The purpose of counting the gold, silver, the copper, and the Mishkan, is Behemshech HaKosu, follows the idea, Val Eres Mishkan Eidos Kanal. What's Eidos mean? Eidos Li Yisrael, and the Eibishter forgave them, V'vitel HaKadosh Baruch Hu HaMaisa Egel, V'haraya, Hirshe Shchinas Lebeneim. So the Mishkan is a proof for the Kapar B'chat Egel, but only the Mishkan, not the Big Day Kohut. Eidos Li Yisrael, in my copy, I put it in a box, because these words were dominant in last week's class. Eidos Li Yisrael, it's a witness for the Jewish people. Shavitel HaMakadosh Baruch Hu HaMaisa Egel, the Eibishter forgave the Maisa Egel, Shaharei Hish Shchinas Lebeneim, and the proof is that he put the Shechina amongst them. Ubemela, therefore, is Negeya as Malachas HaMishkan, in Velch Hish Shchinas Lebeneim, so sein hektisch, was in ganzen Kreisel, it didn't matter if the big Kahuna belonged to a private person. It didn't matter. It wasn't supposed to, but it didn't matter. But the Mishkan mattered, because the Mishkan belonging to the people as a collective was negate to the Chet, the Kapar B'chat Egel. On Kain Shum Shayches Yechidim Shebi Yisrael, in no way could it belong to individual Jews, and therefore only the Mishkan needed to be counted. Mash Ein Kain, next paragraph, the big Kahuna of Azay, Zad Nechel Nechas HaMishkan. They're not a part of the building itself, which was Eidos Li Yisrael Shevitel Al Chat Egel Varaya. He v'shchanti b'seicham seine nit gechelk from Lechas HaMishkan, nor negets of it is HaKein. Is Chatas Eich Bazei the truth of the matter is the Big Day Korner also, as they dafen sein from Momen Atziba, a private person cannot donate Big Day Korner unless he makes it public money. Is aber in dem nit da the Adlasha, there's no emphasis. As a zone nit haben can shayches to the Eisi HaMelach. There's no place that it says that even though the Big Day Kahuna belonged to the whole community, an Ummah could say, this one I made, this one I made, this one I made. There's a lot of bias, identity of shame. Only in the Mishkan was it necessary that had to be eradicated, had to belong to the community all collectively, because it was Negei Chat Egel. The Big Day Kahuna, it didn't matter. Val Zer Mitzias is nicht kein chelik from Mishkan Eidos Nachan Mishkan, because the Big Day Kahuna are not part of this Eidos. Now, Chevra, you gotta say wow about this. It's unbelievable. All of a sudden, everything fits. Why? Because only the Mishkan is Eidos Yisrael. So therefore, it has to belong to everybody. The Big Day doesn't matter. So once there's gold in the Big Day Kahuna, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't belong to, there's no point in counting it. They're counting it now not to know the cheshbon. They're counting it now to make it tzibur. But tzibur is negel into the Mishkan to be the Kahuna. Verstehst? V'apize Yumtag v'Yuvan. Yumtag, was man gefindt as a chiluk, was bei Nidus HaMishkan steht. This is a very interesting deal. When it came to the Mishkan, it says that Moshe gave it to the Betzalel and Aliyah. But it came to the Big Day Kahuna, it says 4 lines at the end of that page, V'heim yikhu es hazav. You hear? When they built the Mishkan, Moshe gave them the gold. When they made the Big Day Kahuna, they came and took it. It's Meduik and Lashon HaPosuk. V'heim yikhu es hazav. So how come by the Mishkan, Moshe had to give it to them, and the Big Day they took it? Because the Mishkan had to be Ma'aseh Tzibur. The Big Day Kahuna didn't matter. Gewaldig. Okay? For those who want to rush, the Sikh is officially over. We can't game. This is this. It's oysig available to Sikh.
Yeah, so why Moshe had to take it back to Mammon Simba? If he gave it to them as Mammon Simba.
Big Day Kahuna?
No, he said the Vehem Yichos that Moshe gave them.
No, the Vehem Yichos they took.
Yeah.
But that was for Big Day Kahuna, it wasn't for the Mishkan.
What's it say about the Mishkan?
They had to give it. Moshe had to give it.
So why did he have to take it back then?
Because Shmam Aleichem. Shmam Aleichem. They have a bailus. Uman Kena B'Shavach Kli. It's a din. It's a din. If you give your keli, if you go to the silversmith with a silver becher, it's got a puncture, it's got a dent, he should fix it. If you don't pay him for his work, he can keep the keli. He's not a ganav. Because part of that keli is his. When he improved your keli, he became a part owner. You buy back his ownership by giving him money. Moshe had to take that back. He took it back, especially according to the day that they were not paid, by counting it. So now, we learned 5 out of 8 pages of a Sikha. This is the end of it, okay? We just took a Kli Yokar and made him Yokar Mikol Yokar. It's just Balnik. Okay? What's the rest of the Sikha? The rest of the Sikha is Moshe Rabbeinu. So Yossi Rab wakes up now. Biz Yetz, the Yeved, Tzemach Rab wakes up till. He used to come and complain, how come when I learn the end of the Sikhs? Remember Tzemach Rab? He used to come around. You have to learn the end. The best part is the end. 3 pages. The last 3 pages of the Sikha are where Moshe has to count. And he brings several reasons why Moshe has to count. Okay? Sif Hey. Okay?
This is from two Fabrengens.
Okay, perhaps. The rest of the Sikha is explaining why the counter, the one who can make it the moment is Dafka Moshe Rabbeinu. Al pi anal v'teich tzukumen a taste of beer, you can add more explanation. Habas der inya the chukitan de Moshe. Moshe has to be the one to count it and make it moment. Okay? Next paragraph. Das ist nicht nur mit der Minyan Hanasiyas shel Moshe. Earlier in the Sikha, in the very, very last words of page 281, the Rebbe mentioned that Moshe Rabbeinu is nothing called Yisrael. Since nothing, who currently has to count, so but there's more. What's the more? Nor euch mitzadem was Moshe mitzad atzmi at nidgedaft onkomend to the kapara shadei amishkin. He didn't need it. He was in no way allowed the chatei egel. So he didn't need the mishkan for kapara. So he was not negea b'dover. He didn't have a bias to say this is mine. V'shingamet Rabbi Baruch Rabbi said the Sikha we learned last Thursday night. As Moshe is going to the Einzikir, right? Next paragraph. The Ribir, Allah, and the every other Jew. Mitzadem was they have gemust onkommen to Mishkan la Kapara. Since they needed the Mishkan la Kapara, their desire to get Kapara, you're listening carefully, would interfere with the Kapara itself. If you go over to this cash and say, this gold is mine, you just exclude yourself from the gold of the rest of the Beis HaMikdash, and you just exclude yourself from your own Kapara, because the Kapara is when the whole Mishkan belongs to every Jew. So in order for you to get Kapara, you had to give that up. Who could take it away from you? Someone who doesn't need the same Kapara. Dafka Moshe Rabbeinu. Verstehst? Wer durch Seher Askos Basiyas HaMishkan HaShayches von die Dvorim shenasu al Yodem mit Zeh, the Eisa HaMalacha, since every other Jew needed this kapara, whatever you're involved with, whether you donated this gold or you work with this gold, makes you a part owner. By becoming a part owner, it stops being Mammon Shel Tzibur.
That's about all the Levin.
Okay, fix the cash.
Levim had a shaykhis somehow.
They should have been Meichen. I mean, Chor got killed. I always ask myself, what would have happened if Aaron said no? They would have killed Aaron, you think? What would have happened if Aaron said no? Which was the right thing to do. They would have killed Aaron? I don't think so. I don't know. Aaron made that cheshbon. Aaron's cheshbon, what say the Vayar Aaron, Vayomer, something like Hashem Mocher.
There's an interesting shot, I don't know the exact detail. Basically, Aaron didn't do anything wrong technically.
Technically, right.
Because it wasn't his or something like that. It wasn't his.
No, he just put it was a nest.
No, it was some.
The Shayrech Leisa was a nest. His Sliach Maisa something. Huh?
A Yid cannot make a Avodah for another Yid or something like that.
Perhaps.
It's not,
But what does Rashi say? Harbe Dvarim Ro Aaron. Chor B'Nosha Miriam is laying dead. His blood is contaminating the camp because he refused to help him. So Aaron says, if I don't do it, they'll kill me too. And then they'll do it. In other words, his cheshbon was, let the Aveda be Aminat and the whole Klal Yisrael. I ask myself every time I get the Pasha, what would have happened if Aaron dared the Jews to kill him? What would be the history of the Jewish people? What would have happened?
Chor was a big guy too. He wasn't.
Are you kidding? He was the eldest from Mitzvah.
Saying he wasn't nobody.
He was the eldest from Mitzvah. B'no Shal Miriam. He was Miriam's son.
When Moshe went up in Ma'ila to the Mishpota, Kol Mishiyesh and Dvarim,
Aaron Chor, Baal Devarim Yigash Aleim. Yes, he was a young boy. He was very young. So this is the first reason Moshe has to count. Moshe has to count because he has no shaykhs to the chet. He can be the one to unify the Mishkan and make it the community so they get the kapara. Sif Vav. Why does Moshe have to count? Der Uftu for Mishkan, if the andere Mikdashes, what is the advantage of the Mishkan of all the later Mikdashes? But cloud the Mishkan is considered lower. I mean, just Hebrew, right? What's a holier word? Mishkan or Mikdash? Now the Gemara says Mishkan the Ikri Mikdash and Mikdash the Ikri Mishkan. The fact of the matter is, we looked at this in the Sikh a couple of weeks ago. Remember Truma, we looked at this. Everybody calls the Mishkan Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash Beis HaMikdash. Shechina is lower than Kedusha. So as much as you're going to say Mishkan is also Mikdash and Mikdash is also Mishkan, we call the Mishkan Mishkan because it's mobile and it's temporary. But there's another factor. It was never destroyed.
That's a sikh on that.
Why? Right? Of course, Sichana. Because Ma'aseh de Meishe Nitzchim. Chelk Tezayin. Footnote 43.
Yeah. Is that Mikdash Mokim is the Kaddish, but the things like Mishkan,
The Uftu for Mishkan of the andere Mikdashes. What's holy about the Mishkan above all the other Batei Mikdash is in them, but there is a Nitzchi, it's forever. The Gemara Zok, Mishan Nivne Mikdash Nishan. When Shlomo HaMelech built the first Beis HaMikdash, he didn't destroy the Mishkan, but Gonas, Ayel, Meyed, Krashav, Brichel, Abuda, Vadona. And the time, the reason is, well, the Mishkan is Ma'aseh de Meisha. The Mishkan is Meisha Rabbeinu. Is Nishaychet as a bottle of Ma'aseh de Meisha. It's a cloud in Medrash. Ma'aseh de Meisha Nitzchim. Whatever measurement there is forever. And the Nibber had the Kol Prat the Prat Shelo Asiyah. Every detail of the Mishkan. Yedav Dain di Pekida Alpi Meisha. Noch Zer Asiyah. After it was done, Meisha counted individually. You know why? Because Meisha was not participating in building the Mishkan. He was not allowed. But when he counted it, it became his. And when it became his, it became permanent. Mashenkin, the big Dekahuna, last slide, 285, the big Dekahuna, they're not meant to be forever. They're meant to be used up. The begotten not supposed to be forever. Nor aprat in them lekahane from the kayanim ha'ev dem beis hamikdash. It's a detail in the kahuna. Gefindt mit bazei as nigdel to zava with ha'eyo. The big day kahuna were used up and replaced. They don't have a property of nitzchias. So Moshe has to be involved. Moshe doesn't have to count it.
He can't be involved.
So he shouldn't be involved. So Moshe is counting to make it everybody's. Moshe is counting now because now it's Negeah. And Dafka Moshe Rabbeinu, first of all, because he's the Nasi Ador. And second of all, because Moshe Nitzchias. V'yesh loymar. And the Rebbe finishes, and the rest of this 2 pages is this word. As der Bier Hanal in dem Eiftu from Pekudi HaMishkan, Api Meisha, as der Minyan Api Meisha, to Ufgit on them Kesha, the Mishnah Mishkan, with Kales of Meisha, that when Meisha counts to become like the Meisha Rabbeinu, is Oich Matim mit dem Pirish HaPnim in Elam Pekudi HaMishkan, after they bring in Lekut HaTeirah. Lekut HaTeirah starts with Shmeis, you know that. Lekut HaTeirah Shmeis, Vayikra, V'midl Dvar. Lekut HaTeirah Shmeis is just 2 pashas. B'Shalach and Pekudi. And one of the bottom Pekudei translates the word Pekudei from the word Yichud. Like Chayev Adam Lifket is Ishtei Beregel. Whatever it is. Lishke Ishtei whatever. So the Rebbe, the next 4 columns, brings this out. We call Pekudei to count, right? The Alter Rebbe's Pekudei means to become one with. So the Rebbe says counting something is the opposite of one. Counting means you're finding the lowest common denominator, just giving each one a number. Becoming one with the Eivish is the highest Inyan. And that has a whole pilpul, which I'm not going to learn with you. But the maskon is that they're connected. When Moshe counts them, which is the chayr, the lowest level, he's miyached them with the Eivish, which is the highest level. And that's to be dafkis to Moshe Rabbeinu. In short, the Rebbe gives us 3 reasons why Moshe has to count. Because first of all, no shachas terachet. Second of all, only his Ma'aseh Nitzchiv. And third of all, only he, by counting, which is Davar Achei Temimim, brings him into a Yichud, which is Davar Achei Pnimi. Medafnis Bol. Anishes Rachmanis.